Hello and welcome everybody to CT Politics TV. I am Dan Newmeyer and I own the CT Politics Roku channel. We're on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV, and you can find us at ctpolitics.tv. If you've been tuning in for a while now, you've watched some of our broadcasts where we try to get through the headline news without too much opinion on there, and it's not always easy to do. We have varied success with it, but we're getting better. One thing that you may notice about CT Politics TV is that we're pretty open, especially in the guest segment, with our political backgrounds, right? There used to be a time, I remember well, I'm getting up there in age now, I'm 58. But we would watch the evening news and we'd go out with friends, maybe to a restaurant, club, or a friend's house, and we'd talk politics together. And people have different political views, right? Even between Republicans and even between Democrats, people of the same party have very vast different views. If you take the Democrat Party up in Hartford, you have very liberal Democrats, and then you have more conservative Democrats, and then you have middle of the road Democrats. So whichever party you're talking about, people's political views are not homogenous. And it's important that we recognize that there's not just A or B, but that we have many varied political views which all have to coexist together. Of course, when there's an election time, you would think that there was only 2 points of view, and often those are kind of skewed by the loudest fringe sides of both parties. So here on CT Politics TV, what we try to do is we try to be open and upfront about our political backgrounds and views, whether we're conservative or Green Party or independent, unaffiliated. And we had a young gentleman, college student, who came in last night, interviewed by Dr. Amy Chai, who is starting his own political party at 19 years old. Alex Darlington of the STAIR Party, STAIR. You can look them up. I think there's a link still on ctpolitics.tv to the STAIR Party. And excuse me, I found him a fascinating young man because he goes, well, I remember, a long time ago when I was 15, so 4 years prior, the old days, right? So it was kind of fun to hear his passion for politics, and then also his political views, which are kind of outsized for someone his age. But I've given the crew the holidays off. We were going to go a couple more nights, but I think everybody was getting a little bucky. That's what we used to say out in North Dakota when I was working in the oil fields. If you were out there too long driving your truck and for weeks and you wanted to get home, you were getting bucky. So the stress of the holidays and everything else has kind of come on to us, and we need to kind of cut loose, enjoy this. And we're very fortunate to have a very special guest, Representative Jillian Gilchrest from Weha, West Hartford. Took over a friend of mine, Andy Fleshman's seat, when I used to work on the D team, and he stayed in that spot for quite a while too. So I'm really anxious to bring her on here, and it looks like she has appeared. So without further ado, let's bring Jillian on. Okay. Hi, Jillian.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining my little show here.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So we've never actually met, and I've always wanted to meet you because you represent one of the the nice towns up there, and love to go out for dinner and experience West Hartford and all the really great restaurants and shops there, and people should go and hang out in downtown. It's a lot of fun. Let's start with you, Jillian. Now, how I always like to start so you were in high school and everything, and you were kind of picking a political path or a career. And how the heck did you end up in politics?
Great question. And actually, it wasn't high school for me. So I really didn't. Growing up, I am the daughter of two public school teachers, and so we would
Me too.
vote. Yep. Okay. Wonderful. So voting was incredibly important, but we didn't talk politics in my house. The closest we got was my parents referring to, "You'll never believe what the state did again." And now it's interesting. I'll say to them, "Hey, that's me."
Yeah, I did that.
I did that. But it wasn't until college. I was a sophomore in college when 9/11 happened. And 9/11 really opened my eyes to the world outside myself. I was taking a women's studies class at the time and really just wanted to learn more about the world around me. And so after college, I was working as a child advocate at a sexual assault crisis center. And it became clear I was not cut out for direct service. I'm so grateful for those who are. I was more interested in the macro side. And so that led me to policy. How can I change
policy?
policies and systems to make things better for folks? And so I was able at that point to get a job at the legislature as a legislative aide and committee clerk. And that really was my foray in.
That'll do it.
Yep, that'll do it. And,
you're either going to go running or you're going to go right into it. So.
And I loved it and decided then, like, someday I would run. And so I've done advocacy for different nonprofits, lobbying at the legislature, and then ran for office in 2018.
Well, that sounds like not everybody has that approach, but some do. And I think a lot of people like Greg Haddad was a person who was a legislative aide up there. And my path was a little bit different. I didn't, of course, run for office, but I did an internship. And within 3 months, the majority leader, David Pudlin, put me on the Jepson for Governor campaign, running the whole field operations.
Wow.
And I said, it was a great meeting. He had me throw a JF party in can I tell this? Yeah, I think statute of limitations has run out, but he had me throw a big party for the JF deadline in the Public Health Committee offices. And then the next day he said, "Oh, I did a good job at that." And he said, "What do you think you'd like to do up here?" And I said, "Well, maybe I could be a legislative aide." He goes, "Well, you could do that, but you might be there 20 years and still be one. What if I put you on the biggest campaign in the state and you run the whole field operations thing?" I'm like, Dave, I've never done that before, right? He's like, "Well, every morning you're going to bring me a lox and cream cheese bagel and you're going to tell me what happened on the campaign. Then you're going to go in there and do what I told you to do." And I did that. And I was a home improvement contractor, so I could get things done. And if I was tasked to do it. And then when George merged with Bill Curry, he gave me these accolades for setting up all these phone banks and doing this incredible lift that some of the fresh college students weren't quite up to, because I was 30 at that time. But that's how I got into the whole thing. And that was my launch from that perspective. And I preferred that side of the out of the office one. But so now, did you know Andy, of course, and all the people around there? And they must have been going, hey, Jillian, you run for this seat, right? Or,
well, interestingly, I knew everyone. In West Hartford, it's a very Democratic town. And so there were a lot of people interested in the seat. So I wasn't necessarily being told, you should be the one. And so my path was a little bit different I thought that we needed new leadership. I I feel a sense of urgency to get as much done as I can while in this role. And so I actually challenged then Representative Fleischman to a Democratic primary in 2018.
Oh, and whooped him, huh?
Well, 150 votes, but yeah. But
that's a landslide in Weehawken. That's right. When you're putting Democrats on the center, that's great. So now, were you a tenacious campaigner, or were they ready for change?
I was a tenacious campaigner, and the town was ready for change. You know, timing is everything in politics. And so this was 2018. So it was 2 years after Donald Trump had been elected. So there was a sense that we needed new leadership. But I door knocked 8 times over. I could actually drive down the streets and I'd play a game with my kids at the time, and I'd be able to point to a house and tell them about the people who lived in the house, because I had met so many people in my community.
I love that. You know, that's when I worked for the unions, of course, we knocked every door in every major city and every project. And, you know, sometimes people would have a gun when you came to the door, I mean, it was crazy. But what I would say is that most people we met in the cities were just wonderful and wished both parties showed up to talk to them about the issues. And I think I'm a progressive Republican, a non-Trumper variety. And I'm very much a centrist person. So on this show, Joe Aguirre is center left, and I'm center right. And so I say I'm center right and he's center wrong. But we can still be friends and be different parties, provided that we take out the trash in our own party, which I think I did pretty effectively this time. So all right, so now you've become elected. Everybody knows you in town. It's like, oh, it's that Jillian woman at the door. Everybody duck down and turn off the lights. Yes, we'll vote for you. Go away. But that's what you want to do. You want to be out there to show people that you are serious and you're going to work for it. So what was your baptism to fire? Because I always think that the legislature, well, you'd been up there, I guess, as a legislative aide, but that's I think in politics, you can do one term like Joe Courtney and then run for Congress, because you've dealt with all these people and you've realized that everybody's on a different page, basically, and you got to cut a deal, right? What was that like for you?
It was interesting going from being someone pushing from the outside to then pushing from the inside. I think at first what was surprising is experiencing the power structure that exists within the building. So even though I had been elected by my community and I was a state representative, like the other state representatives, I was a freshman.
That's right. That was then, this is now.
And I wasn't a chair of a committee. And so I wasn't necessarily going to get my bills. And that first session, I was just actually thinking back to this. I wanted to license nail technicians. I've chaired the Trafficking in Persons Council for years, and Connecticut was the only state that didn't license nail technicians. Not the only reason that we are experiencing human trafficking in that field, but it was a reason why. Because Connecticut really was this destination for folks who were human trafficking with regards, the nail industry. And so I thought, well, now that I'm in, I'll be able to work with the department and get the bill passed, and immediately ran up against a committee that said, no, we're not going to hear your bill. And so I used my tools from my advocacy to
shame on you.
Yeah, whoops. And now looking back, I'm like, wow, that was pretty bold. And I didn't even think it at the time, but I knew that if a bill was germane, we could recommend an amendment. And so I had the advocates participate in a different committee's public hearing process and asked to amend a bill, and then just spoke about our topic.
That's just shameful.
Yes. And so there was some pushback to that, but in the end, I worked all session with the advocates, developing language, and kept having conversations. And we actually were able to get the licensing passed. So
that's an early victory right there. right? And that's an arm wrestle. You twisted some arms.
Yes. Just kept at it, just kept talking to people and explaining why this was so important. And the momentum built because it became bigger than the issue of human trafficking. And it became also an issue of a predominantly female dominated workforce arguing that they needed legitimacy. And so we had different angles that were coming to play that helped us get that passed.
Well, that's really great. And I've been doing this for a long time. So having been on the inside around the legislature as working for the unions and stuff like that, is that I am able to kind of tell the newbies, like, what you want to do is you want to first get in and make some friends and co-sponsor, right? And work and show that you're a team player. The antithesis of that would be what Representative Kevin Skulchek did in his freshman year, which was to come out with a couple bills. One was the chemical castration of sex offenders, and two, arming every policeman in the state with an AR-15 and body armor in his trunk.
Wow.
And I was so angry that he did that, because it just reflects so poorly on everyone else that you come up with this nutty thing. I mean, it obviously didn't talk to anybody, and of course none of them got out of committee, but there's a contrast for you of how not to do it. And he was a one and done. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But of course, now Sandy Hook and everything else, I mean, that was it was off the charts crazy. So, all right, so you started to get in there and work. Now you had some early victory, and everybody's kind of looking over like, oh no, she's going to go for leadership, right? Oh no, we're going to have to work and do something now. So, so tell me about how it went after that, and did you get some respect from that, or what was the result?
Yeah, I think my take is that I did get respect from that, and it illustrated that I am a hard worker because, as you know, it really, in the final hours of the session is when it was like, hey, we're going to do this. Do you have language? And if I hadn't been prepared, that wouldn't have looked so good. But yes, I had the language, and here it is. And I had been working with the department. And so I think that did illustrate that I'm open to working with all the various partners and trying to figure out how best to get a policy that works for everyone, not just pushing something through without getting that input. And so that's given me the opportunity to serve on a subcommittee of MAPOC, which is our Medicaid oversight body here in the state. And I think in large part that led to today, where I'm now going into the next session, I'm going to be the chair of the Human Services Committee, which I'm really proud of. So I have gotten some leadership opportunities regarding public policy, which, it's politics and policy, right? And at the end of the day, my passion is the public policy side. I do the politics, but the public policy and really trying to figure out how we make something work is where my passion lies.
Well, that's great. And people always ask me, they're like, Dan, why don't you run for office? And I'm straight up with them. I say, look, I don't like reading lots of reams of legalese, and I believe that to be an effective legislator, you got to know what's in that legislation. You don't need to know every bill, because someone else will champion this and someone else will champion that, and you can go, hey, Bob, what's in this one, or whatever. But you have to know your piece.
Yeah.
And if you're not cut out for that, and people run, like, for many different reasons, vanity, or name recognition, or any reason other than what they should be running for, which is kind of to try to make Connecticut a little better place than not. But I believe that most people up there, fall into the category of trying, believing that what they're presenting is going to make it better for us. But I also think that, you know, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And that's why I was mad at that representative for proposing things that were never going to make it out and just kind of throwing red meat to the lions, right? Is I think when you're elected, it's your responsibility not to play to your base, but to try to reach out to all the people who didn't vote for you and say, look, I represent you too. And, you know, there's some things that I'm sure we can work on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how you secure your tenure. And how do you feel about that?
Well, so what was interesting during the pandemic is that prior to the pandemic, I would say that my job really was 70 to 80% policy, 20 to 30% constituent work. And when the pandemic hit, it flipped entirely.
No
And
kidding.
it really became responding to the needs of folks in the community. And to your point, all people in the community, regardless of if they support me or not.
Sure.
And so connecting them to services that prior to the pandemic, they never thought they'd need. In many instances, they were embarrassed to reach out, you know, to ask for that help. But I think that illustrated what I had been saying, which is, to me, I really take that word representative to heart. Like, I am representing you, and I'll do my best to do that. If we do disagree, then you should vote against me. You know, like,
yeah. Or you know, if you agree with 70% of me, then you should still vote for me, or
yeah,
maybe 40%. But
yeah,
you know, whatever. If there's some stuff you like that I'm doing, you know, hey,
yeah,
I'm out here working for you, right? And we can talk about the other stuff, right?
yes. And that's what I've been very open. I always respond to every email. And even if I do disagree, I explain why. And then now that, thank goodness, we are getting to the other side of the pandemic, I'm out in the community having conversations. I had been having that before, but then, you know, for quite a while, it's been just Zoom land. But getting out there, and I think similar to the door knocking, the best way we move forward is by having that one-on-one. People can see you as a real person, and you can listen and learn from each other rather than it being this caricature of a person. And I think that happens way too often in politics, is we're just made out to be something that we're really not. And if we could listen to each other, I think we can move together.
Yeah, we do a show where we bring a couple conservatives and a couple of liberals, and we put our centrists in the middle, and we have them talk back and forth about issues. And at first, I thought it was going to be a bloodbath, right? Given what we've been seeing in the news and all this stuff, but the opposite happened, right? Is when we all got in the room to talk, everybody kind of left the crazy rhetoric stuff and focused on how can I relate to this person. And we had a wonderful time. Everybody's laughing and all this. These are hard right, hard left people, the Green Party. I mean, it was bizarre, actually. I was like, come on, is it really? We're going to play nice here? But it turned out really great. And so I believe that, you know, you're much too young for this, young lady. But the way it used to be was that we could, you know, we'd watch the news and we'd go out to a restaurant or the bowling alley or whatever, and we'd encounter our friends, or we'd go to their house and we'd talk politics, and we'd have different views and backgrounds, right? You know, the old grandpa would have this way and the young kids with that, or whatever. But we'd eat a meal together, we'd laugh about it, and then we'd go on. You know what I mean? It wasn't this kind of vitriol thing that really has kind of popped up since the Donald Trump stuff. And even though initially I was a party supporter of Donald Trump's, and I got into it a year and a half, and I said, look, he did the opposite of what what we just talked about. Instead of embracing the other side, he doubled down and went hard right on everybody, and kind of began this toxic rhetoric of dismissal. You know, we're not going to listen to them, they're crazy, or, you know, there's no such thing as global warming. So blah, 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 or all the stuff that really turned it into a nightmare. And so that brings us to our next, our next topic, which I think was the 2022 election cycle, which was, I don't know, about the worst I've seen in terms of rhetoric and stuff. What did you think of all that?
Yeah, it really does feel like there's two teams and you're fighting against each other to win. And I think people would be surprised that separate from the campaign season, when we're in the legislature,
I was going to go there too. Yep. Go ahead.
Well together. But that's not what sells, right? And in a campaign, it really is about marketing. And so you see I don't think there has to be, but right now there's this divide and you have to prove how you're completely different. Which is a shame, because I think it's just fueling this culture where it's okay to just spew hate at one another, rather than how do we have actual debate and discussion?
Yeah, and for the Republican side, what it ends up doing is you get more of what you claim you don't want, right? When everybody goes, you guys are crazy, we're going over there, you know what I mean? Then you've just lost the war. Now you're going to get, the politics you deserve.
Yeah.
But I don't want to skip over your important point there, is that, and this is what I tell folks, I said, what you don't realize is that within the legislative body, up in the building, everybody's pretty much friends, right? Or at least they're working colleagues.
Yeah.
And you go talk to, Doug Dubitsky about this one, and he goes, no. Or yeah, I want to do that. And you're like, no, or however it goes down, right? But you still talk to each other, and there's really not that animosity, because there can't be. Who could get anything done if everybody was just yelling at each other all the time?
Yeah.
But once you step out of that building and you bring it into how you win a campaign, that's a completely different animal of how to, get your troops fired up and organize and that. So, people need to kind of realize that they get played by the media and the politics, because that's kind of what sells, I guess.
Yes.
And it's a shame too, because, in our lives, we know that nobody's 100% wrong, right? Nobody's generally 100% bad person. There are some, but most of the time it's, everybody's a mixed bag. And then from person to person, you might be conservative on some fiscal issues or something. You want the money, you want value for your money, but you also want healthcare, right? And then, somebody was, well, I don't want to pay for that healthcare. Well, okay, you're on that side,
Yep.
So I think that the Democrats, in a year, at the 2-year mark of the presidency, could have taken a beating from some of the national stuff out there that really makes Republicans or conservatives angry. But they didn't, because of the Trump factor. And Themis Claridis is a friend of mine. And I think that Republicans lost an opportunity to challenge Senator Blumenthal in a real way. Now, my reporter friends are like, they could have never beaten Blumenthal. Well, I don't know. But the thing is that at least we would have had a good political debate. But she was in this crazy primary with 5 other people who had no experience at all.
Yeah.
So moderates, a lot of unaffiliated voters who tend to break Republican, but won't affiliate because they can't go with, the pro-choice, pro-life thing or whatever, choose to look for centrists. And when we look at the the delegation of Connecticut, the only people who've ever been elected to the federal office that we can go back and look at were all centrist people who were moderates. And so on a local level, as you know, like you're very popular in West Hartford. If you went to, I don't know, where's a Plainville or something like that, you probably wouldn't run as good, right? Because people there feel differently. And so mixed in with the whole bag is just over the hill, the politics are different, right? Yeah. In the cities, the entrenched power in cities, like you were talking about at the legislature, when you arrive, there's a power structure in place and you can choose to kind of work within it or end up in what they call the West Wing back in my day, which is way down in the basement, you know, to think about why you can't play nice with with leadership. And some people come around and some people don't.
Yeah.
So now what are your aspirations moving forward, and what's going on with this session? What are the big things that we can expect you pushing this time?
Sure. So like I said, I'm really excited to be chairing the Human Services Committee. I'm a co-chair on the Reproductive Rights Caucus. And so this legislative session, I'm really proud of the state and where we are fiscally. I think we need to continue to pay off our debts because that's been going well for us. But I think this is a time to make some long overdue investments in our workforce, in particular in our healthcare workforce. And getting folks, you know, there's still a lot of people who are struggling in the state of Connecticut. And so ensuring that people can access social supports and healthcare, I think will be important this legislative session. And then, you know, back to what you were saying about the election, reproductive health and access to abortion, I think were a leading issue. And I agree. There's a reason for that is because people are really concerned. And so we want to ensure that Connecticut continues to be a state that protects access. And so I think we'll be looking to do some additional work in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I really didn't think, I think like a lot of people that Roe would be overturned, though people were hinting at it. You know, those in the know were going, it's going to happen, and it did. And so Connecticut has always kind of been a leader there, and I'm very much for women's rights, and I'm a pro-choice person because I used to work for the Democrats and be a Democrat, and I still think that we need to take care of the you know, the weakest among us, and those who can't take care of themselves. That's a responsibility of society, and same thing with women. I feel that they, you know, they took a hit with that, and that was pretty unfair. So I'm glad that you're working on that side of things. You know, as a Republican, I can say that. And the other thing I'm very proud of you for is working with victims of domestic violence. That became a central theme of this campaign with the Thomas Gilmer character who ran for Congress, and people were told that he was a domestic abuser. I find that so abhorrent because I've know some people who were murdered and a couple people who were, you know, severely beaten and stuff over my lifetime, and I just have no tolerance for that at all. We have a responsibility to stand up in those situations. So thank you for your work in that area.
Thank you.
Anyway, I really appreciate you coming on, and hope you can come back. And Joe Aguirre was, you know, he spoke so highly of you because you were so dutiful. She goes, she won't miss it, Dan. She won't miss it. I said, well, all right, I don't have her contact yet. I'll call Matt and try and get it.
Well, I appreciate it. And anytime I would be happy to come back.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. And if you want to put the word out that we're giving everybody a fair shake over here and want to have the conversations, please do send them our way. And, you know, we'll talk to elected officials. Oh, I got a dog.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. Mine's quiet right now. I keep expecting the Gigi, our golden retriever, to pop in here for a cameo, but it's okay. Themis's cat walks across the screen, and so we're animal friendly here. All right. Well, thanks so much. And is this your full-time job now, or do you work for another organization too?
So I've been pairing this with adjunct. So I teach at some of the local universities, but this spring I'll be solely focused on the legislature now that I'm in the role of chair.
What courses did you teach?
So I have my master's in social work. So I teach political advocacy to social work students, and then I teach psychology of women and political science.
Oh, wow. That's a
Great.
full thing. Yeah, that's great. Well, Jillian, it was very nice to meet you, and thank you for doing a good job over there. And we look forward to hearing more about what's going on up at the Capitol, and hope you can be part of CT Politics TV in the future too.
I would love that. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye. Wow, wasn't that great? Right? See, you can have a conversation with people in the other party. Find some things that maybe you agree with that they do, and not buy into the rhetoric necessarily that Jillian's a Democrat, so she's a bad person. No, she's not. She's just somebody whose constituents want her to lead them because she's dutiful and she supports the issues that she supports. That's as true in Plainville as it is in West Hartford, as it is here in Mansfield. And we want to have the conversations with people in the opposite party. I'm a progressive Republican or a centrist Republican. Joe Aguirre is centrist, center-left Democrat, right? Michelle Botello, conservative. Jimmy J, conservative. Dr. Amy Chai, very independent, with a libertarian bent, right? And we have folks from the Green Party, the Stare Party, the Independent Party, right? And we bring on a lot of social groups and stuff like that so that we can start to kind of get back to the less toxic rhetoric and have the conversations we need to have. This is our government. And, maybe Jillian isn't your cup of tea, but she's who's in there now. And if you're a Republican in West Hartford, maybe there's something. Maybe there's one issue or a couple issues or several or a bunch that you could go and talk to her about. She'll listen to you. She just said she would, right? And maybe she'll find something in there and say, yeah, you know what? You're right about that. Because people are not just vanilla, chocolate, or strawberry, right? Not in color. Oh, God. Oh, no, I'm comparing people to ice cream now. Ah! Right? Right? We're not all homogenous, right? We can agree on, gas prices are high, right? Let's lower the gas tax, right? That became something that was a bipartisan supported bill. And then, people are like, well, let's do it longer. No, let's phase it back in. These are all things that are up for debate. So I think the takeaway from tonight's show, one, Jillian found her way and her way in up at the Capitol after being elected. Her first run at that legislation, she used some of the skills that she knew about being in the building and from her nonprofit work to engage social groups on the outside to help put pressure in committees and those types of things. So, that's a very good swimming duck right there. I'll tell you, right? Not if you're a Republican, right? Because she's eating your lunch. But that's how you do it. And if you're a Republican candidate and you have no issue groups that support you, or maybe you do, you have some of the big gun groups or the Family Institute folks or the Catholics, or whatever it may be. Those are your groups that you have to activate to come up and do hearings on legislation that you want. I think another thing that we learned about Jillian is that she likes the policy side, right? And that's a huge advantage, right? If you can get into the policy side of things, then you're a valuable commodity up there, right? And like she said, there's the political side. Well, what I know about being a political strategist is that likability can get you elected over being a policy wonk, right? People like who they like, and if you're charismatic and can speak eloquently to people, you can get elected without really knowing too much about policy. And that's kind of a flaw in our system, is that people have to kind of get down to the brass tacks. Does this person know what they're talking about, or are they just good looking? So I think that just from my conversations with Jillian, is that she has a good sense of both those sides, right? She, from her advocacy work and stuff, she knew how to work a campaign, knock the doors, meet the people, and engage in the public policy ideas. Can you hear my dog drinking water over there? Well, that's CT Politics TV. Dogs drinking water. Anyway, I want you to have a great evening. Tomorrow night, I have a very special interview with Ginny Monk, right? Reporter Ginny Monk of the CT Mirror. And she is this hotshot reporter that you won't want to miss. She's got a great story about the evictions that happened after the pandemic, and the landlord issues. And they did a 4-part series on that. She also did a wonderful story when I first got to know who she was, about school. I think it was Killingly. I might be wrong about that, but it was somewhere in Eastern Connecticut. And half the kids in the school were reporting thinking about suicide, right? Half. And that's a crisis situation, right? And so she did some in-depth reporting. And what was fascinating about that was when they proposed to bring in some counselors from the outside, the community pushback at the hearing or the Board of Ed meeting surrounded not wanting to let Generations Healthcare in to indoctrinate the children on transgenderism, right? Which is completely bizarre, right? They didn't want to have counselors in there. They didn't want to have this in the school. They thought it should be on the outside. And Ginny, interviewed some people, and a young woman who said, I had to move out of town and go to a different school to make it. And now my grades turned around. I'm completing college, and I don't know what would have happened to me if I hadn't done that. So Ginny Monk, hotshot young premier reporter for Connecticut, this kid is going places, and she's writing a lot. So I'm really excited about that interview tomorrow. So tune in for that. And we're going to be off for a few days, enjoying the Christmas season and the holidays. And I hope you are too. This is the third night of Hanukkah. Is that right? Hope so. I think there was a menorah lighting in Tallinn, on this gigantic menorah, and this rabbi was going to, light that sucker with a torch or something. So I fear I've missed that one. So maybe I can get the fourth night when he lights the fourth one. So that might be something fun if anybody's out in the Tallinn area. But the holidays can be stressful, and it's been a tough year, political year. We're going into a new session, and it's going to be contentious, right? So we need to kind of pull together. We need to have conversations with people so we're on the same page. And that means listening, right? And discussing the issues that we're passionate about. We will be back shortly. And I hope you have a good evening.